Hi, Roy here on my channel, Roy Reads Anything including occult detective stories, because it's Occult Detective October. Did a TBR video yesterday talking about the event, and I'm back already. What is this? Well, two reasons. One is I filmed a sort of shelf tour that I didn't include yesterday because the video was long enough already, so you're going to get that in a minute. And I mentioned in that video that I had an idea that books were magic spells, and some people in the comments said, well, that's, wanted me to actually explain that. So I will. So let's have the book tour. Okay, shelf tour. So obviously I'm not going to read all of these, but the ones on the left, this end, I've brought them down anyway, partly because I might want to dip into them, you never know. Partly for reference, in case anyone's got any questions. And also I'm going to research some sort of themed videos on ideas like cool powers of the occult detectives. So that's why this lot are here, as well as to look pretty. So I've got a encyclopedia of weird detectives that could come in handy. Then this one's interesting, Victorian Ghost Hunters Casebook. These are actually not fiction stories, they're accounts of psychic investigations and such from Victorian times, which can usually be pretty dull, but Tim Prassel has found some interesting ones, so that could be interesting to delve into. Couple more edited by Tim Prassel. So Ghostly Clients and Demonic Culprits. This is looking at, well, as it says, the roots of occult detective fiction. So earlier characters and stories before we get the big sort of flourishing of the classic era later in the 19th century. Another one of his, From Eerie Cases to Early Graves, 5 short-lived occult detective series. This came out, I think, last year, and you get stories about characters who haven't got a hugely long series. So Harry Escott had 2 stories. Arthur Machen had a character called Dyson, got 3 of those. Algernon Blackwood, famous for a character called Dr. John Silence, but he had an earlier character called Jim Shorthouse. Then, I know.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was allowed to laugh.
Maybe.
I am.
His making up name powers increased later on. Diana Marburg is a character by L.T. Mead and Robert Eustace. And then I really like these Alan Upward's Alwyn Sargent and Jack Hargreaves stories. There are only 5 of those. What's interesting about them is practicality, really. So Jack Hargreaves, and that is funny for those of us who of a certain age in the UK who were in the Southern Television area in the 70s. But Jack Hargreaves is an estate agent of the kind who buys and sells houses. So his shtick is buying haunted houses for little money, and then eliminating the haunting so he can sell them on for more money. And he's helped in this by Alwyn Sargent, who starts off being a secretary in his company, but romance blossoms. So lots happening in those. So she's a medium, so she will go to sleep in a haunted bedroom and figure out what's going on. Anyway, yes, good collection that. Couple of anthologies here, Judicarilus, Vita Book of Occult Detectives, and the famous Fighters of Fear by Mike Ashley, which is, as you can see, pretty gigantic. You could do all of the Occult Detective October prompts just from this book. Talking of Arthur Machen, got a couple of collections of his stories. So these ones here by Coachwhip Publications. Could wish they'd put the names on the spines, but in each of these volumes you get complete sets of stories about 2 occult detectives or psychic investigators, etc. So this one you get the Carnacki stories by William Hope Hodgson and John Bell Ghost Explorer by Mead and Eustace. And volume 2 it's Aylmer Vance and Maurice Claw by Sax Rohmer, the Dream Doctor. Experiences of Flaxman Lowe, one of the first, arguably the first occult detectives, and some experiences of Lord Seafret by Arabella Keneally, who once lived in my hometown. Sheila Crerar by Ella Scrimsauer. I've done a video about her. And then there's a novel, Luna Bartondale and the Undying Monster by Jessie Douglas Kerrish. Final one of these, The Colour Criminologist by William Lequeur. And From Who's Born, I think that's a novel by Robert Barr. I haven't actually read that. So yes, lots and lots in here. That Undying Monster book is a fantastic novel. Hang on, chaos is ensuing. Yeah, great novel that's shortly to be released in the British Library Tales of the Weird series. So really recommend that, and I can say more about that if people are interested. John Silence I mentioned, Algernon Blackwood's famous character, definitely one of the big 3 or 4 of the classic occult detectives. I would put John Taverner, Dr. Taverner, stories by Dion Fortune, herself a practicing occultist. So you get all the John Taverner stories in here. This Ms. Murder anthology, I pulled that just for one reason. It's got a story by a very difficult to find detective called Solange Fontaine, which is a great name, and it's relatively rare to find female investigators in books written by women, so I've hunted those down. I've actually got scans of a lot more of the stories, but there's one in here. Sardubnapal is translated by Brian Stableford. I haven't actually read this. Looks really interesting. Because it's a French story. Sardubnapal, the great psychagogue, his disciple Rudolph, his medium, the pretty Gianetti Annunziata, and his trio of assistants. So looks like a 1909 French pulp magazine. So those look super interesting. Alistair Crowley, talking of actual occultists, he wrote lots of stories about a character called Simon If, who basically follows Crowley's Thelema philosophy and uses it to investigate things. Lettice Galbraith, it's really one of her stories. Again, Victorian ghost stories, one of those sort of counts within the genre. Sheridan Le Fanu. He has a character called Martin Hesselius, who's a sort of prototype occult detective. Stories such as Green Tea, real classic, which I also made a video about. Another anthology, The Ghost Slayers, edited by Mike Ashley. That's in the Tales of the Weird series. Carnacki, again, basically just got this because it's a nice book. Pretty easy to find. Interesting, I think Carnacki must be the occult detective who's had the most sort of follow-on stories written by others. I've got some of these Jules de Grandin paperbacks. For some reason got the word science fiction plastered on them. Again, quite hard to find. They're in nice collections that are in print at the moment. Haven't read too many of them. And then the rest is the things I am actually going to read. And we're back. So yes, books being magic spells, right? So just for fun, just an idea. One thing is, think of a book. It's paper, a few ounces of paper and some ink, and yet that thing can help create thoughts and emotions in people's brains thousands of miles away over a huge number of years. You know, somebody who writes a book with a sad passage in it, they could be making somebody cry, somebody they've never met, who lives in New Zealand, other side of the world, even decades after the author has died. So there's this magic in that sense. But I was thinking more in a sort of structural way. So I looked around the house to find a book that had no fantastical content at all, which is quite difficult in this house. But pick this one, happens to be The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. So book being a magic spell. Well, the first thing is book covers. Okay, so idea number one is that the cover of a book, it's like the part of a spell where the magician sets their intention, right? So in this book, if I'm looking at it and if I'm deciding I'm going to pick it up and read it, there's all sorts of things that are promising what I will get by engaging with this book. So if I'm going to read this, my intention is to read a book that it's a record-breaking million-copy bestseller, so something that lots of other people have read. It's about murder, but it's got this loose, light, bright kind of graphic style, so it's promising sort of cosy murder type stuff, I suppose. And then, if I believe what people are saying, it's going to be very funny, smart, good, pure escapism, and so on. So
good is hardly a ringing endorsement.
It's deplorably good.
Oh, deplorably good.
Yeah. Ian Rankin says good. But also, yes, so there are these entities like Ian Rankin, who is a person, but also is a sort of brand, so he's being invoked. You've also got the Guardian, that is a discorporeal entity, also entering into the party to tell us about it. So you've got those kind of things all adding to this intention. Also, the book cover it's bedecked with symbols. You know, symbols feel like a very spell-like thing. So you've got the penguin logo, another incorporeal entity. You've also got an FSC logo, so that's Forestry Stewardship Council, I think. It's a certification scheme for the origins of the wood pulp. So it's basically a kind of a symbol that it brings in ideas of nature and ecology, and it sort of says, this is white magic. It's okay to read this because we didn't chop down the rainforest to make this book. So there's all sorts of stuff there that's the intention part. Also, inside any book you get something like this, a copyright page with all sorts of bits and pieces of information about the origin of the book and the restrictions and so on. So these to me remind me of the kind of boundaries that a magician would set. You know, we must have seen it 1,000 times when there's like a magic circle or a pentacle drawn on the floor, and it's like, don't cross the threshold of the circle, or don't worry, the demon can't come outside the circle. So what you're getting here is something that sort of, it's defining the book as a legal entity, nailing it down in space and time, you know, who wrote it, when they wrote it, various sort of codes and things. You used to get a sort of screed about what you're not allowed to do with it. You're not allowed to store it in a retrieval system or sell it without a cover, things like that. So it's sort of putting some boundaries around it. I forgot to mention back on the old cover the barcode. Secret code are known only to initiates, which facilitates the book being bought and sold and distributed. And it also refers to British Library cataloguing, the information that allows it to be shelved in libraries and so on. So there's all of that, and then you get what I think of as a kind of invocation. So typically the title of the book will appear on the cover, on what's called, I think, the half-title page.
It is indeed the half-title page.
And then again on the title page. So a threefold naming of the book to sort of lead us into it. This one actually does it 4 times because it's got stuff on the inside cover. So probably why it's extra successful, because it's done a fourfold invocation. In fact, all of these supporters and blurb writers and press mentions, it's a bit like, you can imagine a magician listing like dozens of angels or entities that are supporting their magic efforts. So all of that happens. There might be other introductory stuff as well, I would see as part of the invocation. If there's an introduction, an epigram, not sure. The little, when people put a little quote or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Dedications, all of this paratextual stuff. Finally arriving at the text of the book itself, and I see that as being the result of the spell, that intention I wanted to have cozy crime in my head. Well, now I'm getting it from the words on the pages, and I'm sharing with these other million people who've bought it. The people and places in the book are becoming real, realer perhaps to us than some real places. I don't really know any real world retirement homes as well as I know Cooper's Chase, which is where the detectives in this series live. So yeah, there's my idea. Books are like magic spells. Happy to have my homework corrected on that by any magicians, readers, or anybody who has thoughts about that.
And you mean magicians, not in the stage magicians sense?
Yeah, more like sorcerers. Yes, I don't mean it's a trick.
No.
And misdirection. It can be.
But it could be.
It can be. Think of those Amazon books where they trick you into buying something that you think's like, Taylor Swift's autobiography, and it turns out to be 20 pages long, and it's just a Wikipedia article written by a bot. So, okay, good.
Imagine.
Back soon with something else.